Alright, so I asked my fans on Facebook a simple question. Do any of the following champions take any skill to play? Master Yi, Yasuo, Anivia, Fiddlesticks, and Malphite. The answers were mixed, of course, with some calling all of them easy, none of them easy, and some of them easy, but mostly focused on calling two of them very easy. I assume most of you would figure out which two were the focus of the most hate. Master Yi and Yasuo were the ones that were most often called the easiest amongst the list. Now, I also have to say that the question I asked them and the champions I chose for this question were all traps. It was all a ruse. Fiddlesticks and Malphite are literally click champions. You click a button and something happens and that's it. If you aren't in range of the enemy, then most of your abilities don't do anything. They are, by all standards, easy to play. However, unless they're fed, they don't kill you outright or fast enough. The fun part is a lot of people were actually saying these champions require a lot of skill while putting down Master Yi and Yasuo. This will become funnier when you realize what I have to say later. Anivia is starting to be mass used right now, competitively and in solo queue. She does a shitload of damage with just 2 spells. However, prior to her being used, players would note her as being really hard to use. This happens a lot with underused champions in that people elevate them high above others and use lack of skill as the reason they aren't played. Yi is an auto attacker and also basically has one ability that does anything. He's relatively easy to understand too. You could say he's easy. Yasuo is a champion with simple abilities, yet a ridiculous amount of ways he can implement and benefit from his own abilities. Still, the most direct route still works against a lot of players. I find it very silly that players will say these champions require absolutely no skill. While they may be easy to play, they require more talent to master and implement at a higher level. The problem lies with the perception of these champions and players not willing to admit their own biases. Let me explain. Skill is broken up into 2 things, mechanical and knowledge. Mechanical varies the most between champions because it's the champion's abilities and how they're meant to and how they can be implemented. If you look at most champions in the game, their mechanics are actually insanely simple. League has very few champions that can truly be considered hard to play, at least mechanics wise. Knowledge is universal. These are the nuances that transfer from all champions such as resource management, maneuverability, map control, and etc. This applies to everyone, but the kicker is that every champion is affected by it in different degrees. For example, Riven has absolutely 0 resources that she relies on besides cooldowns, so her difficulty in that area plummets. However, her damage can only be maximized by learning to weave her abilities and attacks flawlessly, so her difficulty comes from learning how to properly cancel animations and how to control the flow of your attacks. Anivia has insane resource issues, so that amps up her difficulty tremendously and the player has to learn to manage that properly. Her maneuverability is amongst the worst in the game as well, and she has to take her positioning into account tremendously. Malphite can walk into a group of people and take a while to die. The need for him to truly understand proper positioning or risk is lessened. However, he relies on one ability to make the most impact in the team fight, and thus, in order to maximize his power, he will have to recognize situations and pick the best time to initiate. Master Yi will die to a feather after he CC'd. He can't just run in there and tear people apart. He has to keep everyone's crowd control in mind and understand the right times to run in and tear people to shreds. My point in this regard is that all champions require at least some understanding in order to maximize their effectiveness. Yes, some have lesser mechanical skill requirements, but the knowledge required in order to maximize them is different and, in some cases, far harder for people to learn. The thing is, why does Yi and Yasuo seem less skilled than the others? It's because they can kill you. The factors that greatly affect these champions are the factors lower division players and less knowledgeable players have difficulty in exploiting and dealing with. Malphite's strengths are team play, such as being beefy, initiating, debuffing, peeling, and so on. He doesn't have carry potential. He isn't strong in taking down multiple targets other than setting them up to die. He's far weaker with a bad team. In a lot of solo queue games, these strengths are far less used and these weaknesses are inadvertently exploited. Malphite can have the best initiation possible, but if there is no follow-up, which in low division games with less organization is totally possible, nothing will happen and his initiation wouldn't have mattered at all. You could be a support and do everything to set your carry up for success, but they could be terrible at farming or suicidal anyways, so all your efforts were wasted. In short, because of the nature of lower divisions, all the great effort you put as a utility champion can be completely pointless. On the other hand, Master Yi will die to a lot of things. Having just one crowd control and baiting out his Q dodge can result in him dying or doing nothing. Pressuring him early can slow his farm down as he's very reliant on golden items. However, in lower division, players don't do shit and he gets to stomp as a result. Murdered champions like Master Yi and assassins like Talon, Yasuo, and Zed seem much more insane against disorganized players. In lower division, players will not focus these champions. They won't save abilities for these champions to peel them when they jump in. They won't position themselves properly so they can avoid being surprised by the assassin spring, and they'll venture alone by themselves where they can be picked off. This makes it seem as if those champions are easier to play because players don't do dick to stop them. Again, I'm not saying Yi isn't simple. I'm saying that the players' perceptions of what is easy is basically clouded by the champions that are making chumps out of them. It's unfair to the players as well because as much as there are good Azure players, there can be a good Yi player too. They can understand how to play to their strengths, how to subvert their weaknesses, and how to manipulate the flow of the game and their opponents. It is also just flat out butthurt. These types of champions make a player feel like a chump. They are champions designed specifically to kill other champions, and players somehow act surprised that they get slaughtered by them. These champions are doing their jobs, and the rest are seemingly not doing their jobs at stopping them. Now, I don't doubt that they aren't annoying as shit, or that they don't feel like bullshit because I agree that they're frustrating to deal with. If your teammates aren't on the ball when dealing with them, then you'll suffer even if you aren't directly contesting them at all. A bad teammate feeding one of these fucks your team over hard. A teammate who can't peel for you against them loses you the game as they let you die to them. All champions have a skill floor and a skill ceiling. For those not familiar with this terminology, skill floor means the base player's skill level and understanding needed to play the champion at a basic level. There are certainly champions with a very low skill floor, which means they are very easy to pick up and play. Master Yi, Fiddlesticks, Xin Zhao, and others like them have a low skill floor. Skill ceiling is the opposite. It is the limit a champion's potential can be taken and the amount of personal skill a player would need in order to achieve that. Basically, how much effort it would take to play the champion perfectly and how much shit there is to understand in order to maximize a champion. For how simple a lot of champions are, and League in its entirety, all of the champions have a pretty high skill ceiling. Mechanically, a lot of ceilings are rather low for champions, but the knowledge and application of those abilities disgustingly raises the ceiling for them. You've all personally seen the stark difference between a shitty Riven player, a basic Riven player, and a professional Riven player. The main point is that you have to ask yourself this. Ask yourself, what do you actually gain from simply writing off a champion as a no-skill champion? Absolutely nothing but making yourself sound butthurt. If anything, it actually hurts you because you stifle your ability to learn. You're basically dismissing everything else when you say this. You ignore the mistakes you have made. You ignore the tactics the player may have employed to take advantage of you, and you ignore the chance to learn to prepare for this in the future.